The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the August 2020 CIECAST of the Importance of OEM Certifications. I'm Paul Berry, Executive Director of CIECA. The Collision Industry Electronic Commerce Association, or CIECA, develops and promotes electronic communication standards that allow the collision industry to be more efficient. We also provide webinars like this one to help educate both members and non-members. Today's presenter, Connor Smith, Senior OEM Manager for CARSTAR, will discuss the importance of OEM guidelines in an environment of frequent vehicle advancement. He will also share how the steps to review guidelines can be added to the repair process, where information can be accessed, and how to make it a priority for teams. Connor is a longtime member of CARSTAR, holding various positions across departments including insurance, analytics, procurement, and operations. As we start the webinar, I want to remind you there is no verbal communication between the participants and the presenter. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the questions pane on your screen. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. And now I'll turn the program over to Connor.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I thank you for giving me the time out of your day to have a presentation, and I look forward to it. Paul, are you going to share the screen?
Yes, you've got control.
I can't see the presentation.
Sorry. There we go. My apologies.
There we go. All right. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the Importance Certification. Thank you, Paul. So I'm just going to go over a quick agenda for what we're going to discuss, and then hopefully we'll leave enough time for question and answers. So I'll do a quick introduction of myself, a little bit in more detail beyond what Paul did. Also talk about why are we talking about this now? What is it so important around OEM certifications, and we'll discuss that a little bit. And then we'll also discuss kind of what Paul was talking about around what are your alternatives? How are you going to get the information you need today to get that car repaired to OEM standards? Then we'll talk about what certifications to get and how to get certified. And then we're going to also discuss the return on investment and really discuss how that is not necessarily today, but it is something that's going to be happening down the line. And then I really want to kind of hit it home with the future of certifications. I think that's a big question in our industry right now, and what the OEM role or what the OEs are going to do in terms of our future, and really how they're going to impact our claims handling process. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name is Connor Smith. Like Paul said, I'm the Senior Manager of CARSTAR, or OEM Manager of CARSTAR. I have held various positions, and those various positions have kind of really helped me get an idea and a scope of our industry from many different perspectives. I've worked in insurance and worked in the analytics department, worked really close with our procurement team. I then also have worked close with our operations department in building out our operational process. For those that don't know, that is the Edge platform. And then also now recently I have taken along the OE position for CARSTAR that I've held for about a year and a half. And I think that it's good from my perspective to really understand everything, because this really is an important topic that is not just around one of the different ones. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about, the why now. What is so important, Connor? Why are we talking about this now? I've been running my business for 30 years, or why is this all of a sudden so important? There are a couple different factors here that I believe are extremely important for us to realize that our industry is changing. So the first being the most important, technology. As everybody knows, your standard Toyota Corolla has the way more systems and technology in it than it did 10 years ago. And just that alone is making the repair of each vehicle more and more complex. The other thing that is important to realize is the safety factor. So I don't think I need to really express the concern that is the John Eagle case, but that brought into light a bunch of different issues with our industry and making sure that we're repairing our vehicles back to OEM standards. So using repair procedures, using the right equipment, making sure we're having the right training. And really the best way, in my opinion, that we can get there is through certification. That way, you know you have the right training, that you have the right tool and equipment, and you have all of the information through the OE's repair procedures at any given point for any car that comes through your door to repair that back to OEM standards. And so as an owner, if you are an owner of a repair body shop, or if you're an insurer, or if you're an OE, for those shops that do make that investment, you can kind of rest easy that your customer is going to be taken care of. Like I was talking about, kind of, which is also the liability portion. So whether it be a John Eagle case or whether it be a customer satisfaction scenario, with the rise in social media, online customer or online experience and online reviews are ever more important today. So even if you were to not be in a situation where safety is a big issue, but maybe you could have done a better job somewhere along the lines, or using incorrect part or something around those lines, then you're opening yourself up to that liability, whether it be from a safety perspective or just from a customer's perspective. And one of the big things that in talking with the OEs is brand protection. So a lot of times when a customer gets into a scenario or gets into a repair and they are not satisfied with that repair, roughly 2/3 of those people will change vehicles within the next year to a different vehicle manufacturer. So it's really important for us as the industry to understand that we want to make sure that we're providing a good service to those customers so that they want to continue to be in that car. And from the OE's perspective, that is also what they're looking for. And you just want to make sure it's done right. Okay. I'm going to go over some alternative options. Maybe you're not necessarily wanting to make the OEM certification, or because of the unique scenario we're in now with the coronavirus, it might not be an option at this time. So I just want to kind of go over some best practices that you can use, and hopefully you will eventually make that jump. So access to OEM guidelines. You obviously can access those through various ways. There's all data, there's repair methods through CCC, there's a bunch of different ones for the estimating softwares. So those are things that, you know, if you are having trouble on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis, those are kind of a good catch-all bucket. I wouldn't recommend using those if you're certified, and I'll get into that in just a second. But those are some options there that you can use as kind of a Band-Aid situation, if you will. But you always want to make sure that you are following the OEM guidelines. So you can also purchase the OEM subscription from the certification. Now, the one thing that I will mention is when you're purchasing these subscriptions through the OE from the OE's website, there are actually times where if you were to say, I want a year subscription, the annual certification cost is actually less than the certification itself. So it's important to note that sometimes if you may not realize how much you're spending on those subscriptions, even if you're doing a day pass, a 30-day pass. obviously it makes more sense to kind of buy in bulk. So you would want to say, okay, well, let me just do this for a year. Well, if you are certified, you actually get those repair procedures for being certified, and it's also included in your annual fee, along with marketing materials and some other things. But that is actually sometimes less than the actual subscription cost itself. So just something to note that it's really does, the cost does kind of creep up there. The one thing I will say is experience is never the right way to go about it. And the way I look at it and the way I tell the CARSTAR locations or any location that I'm talking to is, even if Connor Smith, the technician, repaired a 2020 Honda Accord with a front bumper, and then I get the same front bumper in the next week from a different insurance carrier, a different customer, a different fleet carrier, whomever it is, they don't know that you did the research on the last one. So documentation and doing all of those is vitally important, because they don't know that you just repaired that. And also, things are rapidly changing. When we use the OEM repair guidelines from the certification, sometimes those things change daily. Sometimes they change weekly, or sometimes they change monthly. But you want to also make sure that just because it was the correct way last week or last month doesn't mean it's now the correct way after all the OEs have done some testing. So I'm going to kind of now go over Connor, how do I know which one's right for me? There's so many out there. How do I know what's right for me, or where do I start, or a bunch of those questions. So I'm just going to kind of go over the methodology that you should go through, and at least helping decide to get that first, or your first one or your first two certifications. So obviously the first one I think you should look at is your book of business. So I would run a report on estimates written in the past 6 months to a year on all the vehicle brands that you've written estimates for. Now, I said estimates and not repair. One thing to note is when you are writing an estimate, that's always an opportunity. So you don't want to include all the ones that you've done repairs for, especially if you're repairing maybe a Tesla and one came in that you had to write an estimate for, and it was you found out that there was some structural damage to it that would mean that you need to have a certification to purchase that part, and you had to turn it away. So it's important to know all opportunities should be included when running this report. So again, I say minimum of 6 months, but recommend at least 12 months worth of data, and just see what are your top 3 to 5 certification or brands that you're repairing, and then just start digging from there. So I'll go over how to get certified in the next slide, how to get certified and doing the research. The next part I would say is when you're looking for certification, maybe you've already got your top 3 to 5 and you want to make even more investment. Maybe you want to try to get some market share that you don't have currently. I recommend looking at purchasing maybe your local DMV data. So there are registration data out there for purchase from your DMV or local government that will show you all the vehicle makes registered in a given area. So I recommend doing that when you want to potentially make an investment for getting market share on a vehicle brand that you currently don't do today. So say for instance, maybe BMWs or Audis or Tesla, or maybe you don't see a lot of GMCs or Ford, any of those, or it could be any vehicle brand, quite honestly, but that will allow you to see what's out there that you're not even seeing at your shop. Then from there, I would also just kind of look at what makes the most sense for your shop. When you're doing the research of what is it going to take to be Tesla certified? What is it going to take to be Honda certified? What is it going to take to be Ford certified, et cetera, et cetera? You want to make sure that you're, at least for your first 1 to 2 certifications, to just get familiarized and make it an easy process, don't choose one that you're going to have to invest $100,000 for. Choose one that you've already got sort of the equipment for. You should already have most of the standard equipment, because if you're repairing those cars back to OEM standards, which means you're using the proper equipment, the big ticket items like your welders, your frame bench, your squeeze resistant, maybe even a rivet gun, those things, you shouldn't need to make those big investments, but maybe some of the hand tools or specific tooling for repairs on a one or two different models of that make, that's where you might make that investment. But just see which one makes sense, and I'll kind of go into detail a little bit more on the next slide of getting the certification. And then also just look at your dealerships. See if the BMW dealership down the road, or the Honda, the General Motors, the Chevy, just look to see if they have a body shop, or if they need a body shop, and say, well, I'm looking at certification. If I get my certification, I can make you my preferred vendor or my preferred supplier for parts. Would you be willing to partner with me on getting some work to my door? So also just looking at what your local dealers need, because there are some certifications out there that do require a local sponsorship. But even beyond those, you want to make sure you have that good relationship with the dealer to let them know you are the certified network, and that if they do have anything that comes across their way that they maybe not be able to repair if they don't have their own shop, that you can facilitate that need. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of go into how to get certified. I kind of went over it just a little bit, and that's really just going to be your research. It's as simple really as making a Google search, Honda Pro First certification, or Ford collision certification, or General Motors certification, and those will bring you to websites. About 90% or more of the certified programs out there have websites dedicated to what the program requirements are. The program requirements, that's simple, which would include your tooling and equipment, your training, and any other kind of needs that they require during the process. So that way you can get the idea, okay, which one does make sense for me. If there is a dealership sponsorship required, which is the dealer colleagues, that's where you'll want to go through the dealer. So if you're thinking maybe a Mercedes, a BMW, JLR, which is Jaguar Land Rover, those are where you need the local retailer or dealer, however the nomenclature that they use, will need to sponsor your shop for that certification. So recommend reaching out to them to get that process started. For CARSTAR folks, and for those that are a part of the Driven Brands organization, what we do is we have links in our LMS platform that brings all of that information into one spot. So if you're kind of a bigger MSO, if you maybe have 7 or 8 shops, or maybe you have 100 shops, whatever it may be, I recommend just having all of that information in one area and have links directed over to those websites. So you minimize the amount of Google searches that you would have to do. So I think one of the biggest things in my conversation with shops and just in the industry is, Connor, what is my return on investment? I'm investing a lot of money, $50,000, $100,000 into these certifications, and I'm not getting anything back. I want to kind of address what I would say the elephant in the room. This is really a long-term game. I think of this as the analogy that I've always used is, this is your 401k. This is your retirement plan. This is how you're getting involved in making that investment for that return later. Just because we get in, I think it's wrong to get certified to get something today. I think there's a lot of benefits to certification around the quality, just all of the fact that you have everything at your disposal to get that certification or to repair those cars back to OEM standards. I think it makes yourself more marketable, quite honestly, for those insurance carriers. And I think it also helps bring in more technicians. In my opinion, the fact that you're investing a lot into your own technicians means that you care about them and that their own growth. And even when you talk about the higher end vehicles, that is very advantageous and brings in potential more talent, as we know that technicians aren't the easiest to find around. So I really say it's a long-term investment. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not even be next year. But the unfortunate part is there is a end game here, and once the OEs have a footprint built out, the markets are closed. And you already see that with Honda, which I'll kind of discuss on the last slide about the future of certifications. Nissan's getting up there. Subaru's got just a plethora of people lined up in a lot of markets which are already closed. So I think that the immediate impact isn't today, but it's really going to help you save your business from the future. I would hesitate to say that if you have a Nissan certified shop across the way, or you have a Ford certified shop across the way, or you have a Honda or whomever it is, that shouldn't deter you from getting the certification. They have their own internal calculation for body shops per area, whichever the area is, whether it's a metropolitan area or a rural area. And if there's a spot open, I would take it. So I wouldn't say that just because there's another shop that's already there to deter you from that. I really think this is kind of a long-term game for you to just even retain your own business currently. So there's also a lot of marketing support. So obviously people like CARSTAR and those in the Driven Brands organization have additional marketing resources at their own disposal. But if you're not as fortunate to be in those scenarios, there are a lot of marketing support that you get from the OE themselves. So when you go live with a bunch of these certifications, you get an influx of brochures, documentation, digital aspects. I know Nissan recently just came out with 3 or 4 promotional videos on YouTube for kind of commercial-esque that will help promote the business, promote the certification network. Ford has their Ford Pass app, which I'll kind of talk about the future of certifications. And then just using that marketing support, that might get you 1 or 2 additional cars down the road. And if you think about it, an investment from $3,000 on a heavier side, 5 additional cars throughout the entire year almost pays for your certification. So it's really a minimal investment. It's a big investment up front, but once you get that, it's only the annual certification that you're getting. And although that they do require a little bit more, maybe they upgrade a specific tooling or they add some tooling to it, it's really a lot of upfront investment, and then the maintenance investment is far less. So having said that, I really just want to hone in on the future, the future of certifications. I think that this is kind of the biggest up in the air thing right now in our industry that I don't really think anybody knows what the future holds. So take this for what you will. These are my kind of opinions on the matter, and just based on things are building up and conversations that I've had with a bunch of the OEs currently. But what I will say is there's one consistent thing before I kind of go into the future is the OEs are here. They're becoming more involved with the claims handling process, and they're not going to go away. They're going to be more involved. They're going to be either referring the work or partnering with insurance carriers or help educating customers of the importance of the certification and choosing their shop. whatever it may be, they're here and they're here to stay. So in my opinion, OEM certifications are almost like ICAR. It's becoming a standard. I think there will be a time where certifications are so important that there will be certain vehicles, and there already are today, where you can't even repair it unless you're certified. So that brings me to my next point, parts restrictions. I think that it's a somewhat of a controversial topic, but if the OE believes and feels that they don't want a specific type of repair or part to be touched unless you're a certified network, that has significant impact, and that tells you how important customer safety is to what they want. One thing that comes into mind is Volkswagen. They recently came out with side impact. Now, they didn't specifically say you needed to be certified. You could get away with not being certified, but the qualifications to get a lot of those structural side impact parts, you would almost need to be certified, or you would have to have the same qualifications as a certified shop. So I think it's also sort of a similar shift in insurance that we saw a long time ago. Now that I understand that is a little bit before my time, but in speaking with a lot of people in our industry and in our internal staff, there's a situation where a lot of people resisted the DRP networks and PBA networks and all of these other kind of referral-based business or referral-based programs that the insurance companies came out with. And then it came to the situation where everybody wanted to be a part of it, and it's hard to get on some of those programs now. So I think that that is the same scenario we're in. Now, is it going to be as big of an impact? I don't know. But what I can say is it's worth the investment now to keep your business later. Having said that, you want to, like I said, you want to be ahead of the game here. You don't necessarily want to lose your business 2 or 3 years down the road, because the certified network has an ability to get cars to the certified stores. So again, keep reiterating, you're making the investment today for the return down in the line. I think customers are going to continue to get educated here as the certified networks build out their teams. They're going to market their customers even during the sale process of buying new vehicles. I've seen some people give brochures out on certified networks, and if you have issues, go here. There's also the Ford Pass app that has the certified network there. There's some other people that use the GPS point of interest. They have actually the certified network loaded into the point of interest inside the GPS of the vehicle. So I think as more and more technology increases, that work will soon shift to the certified networks. And then I think also that there's a potential of a dual referral program. So maybe State Farm partners with Nissan and Toyota and Honda, or Nationwide partners with those, in which if a customer has a Nissan, they will refer the Nissan certified network in the State Farm VRP before they do the next shop in mind. So the last thing I just want to say is there are many different ways they potentially are going to be in the future, but I do think they are going to be in our future, and I recommend that everybody get certified. So Paul, I think that was a long-winded. I hope we still have some people here, and I'm opening it up for questions.
Thank you, Connor. Stacy Phillips, CIECA's Marketing Director, has been monitoring the webinar for questions. Stacy, have we received any questions?
Yes, we have a question. What percentage of U.S. shops have any OEM certification programs?
I have not a standard number off my own, but the number that I've seen thrown around is somewhere in the range of like 10 to 15% of shops have maybe one certification. That's the number that I've been told, but I don't have that number written in stone.
Okay, thank you. And another question, where are all the German European OEMs?
If they could type in more detailed, I'm imagining they're referring to General Motors or not, sorry, General Motors, sorry, BMW and Mini. But what is it, if they could clarify what they mean by where are they?
Sure. We have another question. Is it generally understood by all parties that OEM certification will increase claim severity for insurers and premiums for policyholders?
I think there's the definite risk as there's more pressure to put OEM parts on there. So that is definitely a concern that our industry is going to have to figure out. And we're in a weird situation where it's happening rapidly. There's a lot of different, you have agreements with policies that involve aftermarket part usage. And then if you combat that with the fact that some OEs have repair procedures that say you can't put an aftermarket part on here, or maybe it's kind of it leaves it up for interpretation. There is that risk. So because it's for brains bigger than me to figure out, but that is definitely something that our industry will need to figure out.
Thank you. And who do you contact to purchase DMV data? Is it the DMV?
I would start there and then kind of help guide them. I personally have not done that, but there are methods of getting that data. I do know vendors out there have it, and there are methods of getting it. So I would start by contacting your local DMV.
Thank you. We have another question. Seems like OEs are very specific on equipment types. How do you make sure what you have meets OE requirements?
That's a good point, and I probably should have included that in my presentation, but I think the OEs have been very good about shifting their requirements from brand specific and model specific equipment to spec specific, and I mean specification when I say that. So a lot of the big ticket items like your welders, your frame bench, squeeze resistance, spot welders, rivet guns, the ones that take a lot of investment, they are pretty aligned. So when if you haven't made the investment to one of the certifications, I recommend looking at, if you had a wish list, so maybe you do need to upgrade your welder. If you had a wish list of all of the certifications that you could ever dream of, if money was not an issue, I would look at making sure the welder or the big ticket item, whatever it is, meets all of those requirements. And there's a lot of overlap in between the certified networks where you would only need to have one welder or one frame bench that can kind of cascade down. And then there's not a way to get around some of the specific hand tools around. Maybe Ford has a specific thing for some of their vehicles. I know Subaru has a handful of hand tools specific to their vehicles that you'll need for specific type of repairs. Tesla is the same way. So there's not a way to get around that, but the good news is those are minimal in investment.
Great. Our next question is, why do certified shops end up purchasing a large majority of vehicles due to unsafe repairs performed?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Sure. Why do certified shops end up purchasing a large majority of vehicles due to unsafe repairs performed?
I personally, in our network, have not needed to purchase vehicles by being a certified shop for unsafe repairs. So unfortunately, I cannot speak to that as I don't have any experience regarding that.
Okay. Our next question, From the same individual, does the certification apply to specific technicians? That is, to obtain OEM certification, are there specific requirements for technician training and specific tech accreditation? If a shop is certified and techs leave, what happens?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So it depends. All certified networks take this a little bit differently and have different levels of restrictions to their program. So I'll say Tesla, for instance. One of theirs is you have to have 2 certified technicians. If one of those leaves, then you only have 1 technician, or if both leave, you have to retrain some technicians before you can repair any more of those vehicles. Around some of the other ones, they're maybe not as quick to react to those, but when recertification comes up, if you do not have that training in place, then you will lose that. So Honda, for instance, or Nissan, for instance, they have specific training to them. And I know FCA is actually going to be requiring AMI. So your technicians are like your ICAR people. They are going to be tied to these certifications. So it will be imperative to make sure that if those technicians leave, that before your recertification or your renewal comes up, to get whomever is left in the shop, if you do replace them, the appropriate training. So that way you don't get into a situation where you fail an audit and are unable to resolve any gap items during the assessment.
Okay, one of our attendees wanted to know if you've heard of any of the EV manufacturers have OEM certification programs.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. Have you heard if any of the EV manufacturers have OEM certification programs?
The only one that I know of that is all electronic is Tesla. The other ones, they don't have any kind of different specification. So like in the instance of like GM has a couple, Ford will have one. Those are just embedded inside there. But Tesla is the only one that I'm aware of that has a certified network that is purely EV.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, what type of partnerships are you seeing among insurers and OEMs currently and moving forward?
I think that insurers are definitely trying to get an understanding of the certified network and how the two can be in the same area. I think that the first stop would be a lot of the higher end vehicles that have parts restrictions. They are looking at those and seeing where the gaps are in their areas that they need to resolve, because only certain people can repair certain types of repairs when there's a part restriction in there. And they're also looking at standard certification and seeing how that might fit into their network. So they're having conversations. I think there's not quite an answer there. But there are in discussions, and I can't say which ones are talking with which, but those conversations are happening at the top level of what kind of strategy can they implement to make sure everybody is getting what they need.
Thank you. What's the industry average for cost per OE program to the collision center?
I think that unfortunately I can't give you a number. I think it just varies a little too much, because it all depends on what certification that you're looking for. If you're looking for getting into the higher end vehicles that require a little bit more or they have a lot more restrictions on what type of equipment you'll need, that is a higher level investment. You also talk about if you currently don't have aluminum capabilities when you want to do something with like a Ford or a GM, that is going to also require some kind of level in investment. And then with Honda and some of the others, it just all depends on what your current equipment looks like. So And it can range anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 for just kind of getting some miscellaneous tools to $50,000 to $100,000 if you're making those investments to the high end, or you're looking at your aluminum capabilities, or you have to upgrade one of your big ticket items, which are like your welders, your frame bench. So it really just does vary depending on your own individual situation.
Thank you. One of our attendees wanted to know if any of the carriers have a DRP relationship with OEM certification programs.
I believe that there are some out there in discussion. I cannot specify those at this time.
Okay, thank you. And another question, do you anticipate OEM certifications requiring compliance with the EPA's, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, NESHAP 6H auto body rule, NESHAP?
That's a good question. I do know that, like with the insurance carriers, they do require OSHA compliance. There are some out there that is one of their requirements. So I'm not aware necessarily of the OEs requiring that, but they do have their own individual compliance, which there are some overlap with OSHA. It might not necessarily be like, and I say OSHA, but the 6H is kind of the same thing as around the paint, but it's, I think there's a lot of overlap there, but it's not specifically laid out.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, it's a two-part question. When there are multiple shops in one general area with the same OE certification, how do they dictate where to send the work? I've had multiple conversations with owners who regret getting certified due to minimal or no ROI. Is there a limit to the amount of shops that can be certified in a specific geographical area?
The answer to that question is yes. So they all have a different formula for what amount of body shops in a given radius need to be in an area to service all of the vehicles in that area. So if you're talking Chicago, in the middle of Chicago, you might have 5 Honda or 5 Nissan or 5 Toyota. Well, Toyota's a little separate, but I'll say 5 Ford, GM, the big top 5 people that there's a lot of vehicles on the road, and you wouldn't bat an eye. But if you maybe go down into the suburbs of Illinois, you might only have 1 or 2. So I do think that a lot of the OEs have formulas, and they are thinking of the shops when they make those decisions, that they're not necessarily diluting their own network. So I would say don't hesitate. Like I had mentioned before, it's really just because there's another shop down the road, I wouldn't deter away from getting it. Now, how they might choose, there are a lot of certification networks out there that are working on scorecards and basically a referral based on your performance on that certification network, almost kind of like what State Farm does with their locator. Depending on what your performance is where you show up on the locator. That's what I think that the OEs are going to start to move towards. So I hope that answers their question.
Thank you. And do you know the part of the insurance policy that dictates whether a vehicle is repaired to OE standard or insurance quality, and how that would be enforced?
I am not able to clarify that one.
Okay, sure. Our next question, will the exclusive use of OE parts as a result of certification lead to higher pricing for parts and then to write-offs instead of repairs? This is my take on it. So I would say that they wouldn't increase the parts after requiring OEM parts put on there. I think that the OEs
actively look at total losses, and increasing the amount of each individual part would increase the total loss percentage. So I wouldn't think so, but I don't know. I can't say that for a fact. I would, let me clarify a little bit more, Stacy, on that. There are certification networks out there that do not require that you spend X amount of dollars or X percentage of dollars on their on OEM parts to be certified. It is a metric that they look at, but it's not a requirement at this time. There are a few out there, but most of them do not.
Okay, thank you. And do you know if OEMs limit the amount of repair information they provide to ALLDATA? Does ALLDATA have all of the information needed to repair the vehicle? If not, why not?
I think there's some limitations of things like ALLDATA or Tech Advisor or repair methods from when you think of like calibration standpoint. But from a repair standpoint, like maybe taking off a quarter panel or sectioning a quarter panel, or maybe you're sectioning the rails, it's that information is all there. Now, what I had mentioned was it's not necessarily up to date. That is correct. They do have partnerships with all of the OEs, but if the OE made a decision to make an adjustment to the repair procedures of replacing a quarter panel on a 2012 or 2020 model, that might take a little bit longer to get into ALLDATA than it would be for it to be populated on the repair procedures website directly with the OE.
Our next question, do any OEMs provide advantaged parts pricing to certified shops?
I don't think it's through the parts that they don't, I don't think it's that when you become certified that you necessarily get access to better part pricing. But I would say that there's an advantage to having a dealership with your certified program, that maybe they're more willing to price match parts for you as you do have that partnership. So nothing formal, but it could vary by local level, where if you have that relationship, it could lead to more price matching opportunities with that dealership.
Thank you. Are insurance carriers in the process of adopting OE certified requirements and approving those OE certified requirements regarding new OE parts and recommended repair procedures?
I think that most of the insurance carriers do want what's best in mind for their customer, and so does the OE. And I think with if beyond a doubt and with proper documentation, you should be okay. Now that varies and it depends on a lot of factors there, and I'm going to stick to the vague answer, but I think that you should be okay. If you're using the repair procedures, if there's a disagreement, then that's a business decision that you need to make as a local repairer of what you're going to do in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, what are your thoughts on the explosion of electronics and safety systems in vehicles? Is it a reasonable expectation on body shops to have qualified personnel to service those systems across multiple brands, or leave it to the dealership and experts?
I think it's that's a business decision. In my opinion, if you want to not have to worry about subletting that out to the dealership, and you do really want to get yourself involved with calibrations and things with the technology side of the ADAS systems, that is something that you can go with. Now it comes with a bigger investment, having different tools and more training. So it would depend on your level of investment and what kind of return you would get on being able to do it in-house versus having to sublet it out.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, if you're able to answer, what kind of pushback is there from the insurance DRP partners for the required inspections after a collision? For example, Nissan Infiniti requires column inspections on many repairs or frame measuring before, during, and after. How is that being handled from your experience?
I'll kind of go back to my last comment. It's if you're at the local person, if your local person insurance carrier is not paying for it and it's in the repair procedures site, I think at that point you are always, the one point I will say is we are always, and I say we as in the repair facility, are always liable for that vehicle. And there might be times where you'll have to make a business decision to do a procedure that you may not get prepared for because it's required. And I think that's just the nature of the business, and that's the feedback that I give our shops.
Thank you. Can you please clarify the benefits of certification to the shops as well? In many instances, training is included, access to repair procedures, service bulletins, marketing materials, etc.
I think they did a pretty good job summarizing it myself. No, they basically hit everything. I think that there's also additional tools and resources from a technology standpoint. You get access to a lot of different like webinars. For instance, Nissan's throwing a webinar for their certified network on some additional processes and tools to help them out. You also get the ability to go to these conferences. Yes, you have to pay for them, but I've attended a lot of them and they're very good, and they bring a lot of good speakers and additional benefits for the shops beyond just their certified network. I think that there's a lot of good that comes out of being certified. I think they want what's best for their certified network, and they do come out with not saying Nissan, but just in general, a lot of them come out with additional resources to help you out.
Okay. Do you see more OEMs selling their own branded insurance in the future?
I honestly don't know. I think it's right now we only see like Porsche and Tesla kind of doing their own insurance at the higher end level, but down to the local level, we're starting to see more partnerships with insurance carriers, like using the like if I think Nationwide and Toyota agreed to do a partnership, and I think that's maybe more the realm. Rather than selling their own insurance, they might partner with a specific insurance carrier.
Thank you. And our next question, our attendee wants to know, how do I choose the right OE certification for my shop?
Yeah, so I would recommend you kind of looking at your opportunities. So looking at estimatic data in the past 6 to 12 months and seeing what your top 3 to 5 vehicle makes are, and just start from there. And that'll give you an idea of what's actually coming through your door and what's probably your, I would then attack 1 or 2 of those to get started.
Great, thank you. Our next question, do OEMs actively provide sales leads to OEM shops? For instance, do OEMs use telematic systems to steer cars to OEM shops?
I think there's different methods. I don't think there's a concrete one in place currently with any of the vehicle manufacturers that are actually doing the referral. I think they're all trying to find the sweet spot that is referring the work out there. There are some people that partnered with specific technology companies, and they might provide free towing within 35 miles. There are people like OnStar and that have the ability to call the customer. There's the Ford Pass app that kind of will help do push notifications, although they're not doing it today. That's a potential use of it. They haven't stated that they will, but that is a use case for it. And there's just going to be different methods of really interacting with the customer after the repair. Now, where in the repair, I don't know where that's going to be, and I don't even think the OEs know the best spot to, but that is going to be how they're going to at least plug their certified network in.
Thank you. We have two last questions. The first, as a repairer that has OEM certifications that recommend certain procedures when repairing that OEM vehicle, if a particular bill payer feels those procedures are unnecessary and are unwilling to reimburse, what advice can you provide a shop to ensure a consumer is made whole and still maintain an acceptable profit?
We've got a couple of these, and I'll try to, I don't want to give some bad advice where then they come yelling at me, but I think it's if you're really struggling at the local level, I have said, we are always liable for that vehicle. And if you believe that those repair procedures are going to put the customer's repair in a bad situation, and you want to make the customer whole, there are times where I would just give you the advice and say, just pay for it yourself. Even if it's a $500, it's not, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, it's not worth the risk of trying to battle any kind of situation, because we are liable at the end of the day.
Great, thank you. Our last question, when tackling diagnostics, are any aftermarket tools approved on OEM certification programs?
Yes, it does vary. So I would say the scanner is probably the most consistent with the aftermarket. You've got Aztec and AirPro, probably the two bigger players involved with scanning and certified networks. Now, it depends on the certified or which brand requires which one, and you'll be able to find that in all of the program requirements. But there are some certified networks out there that do allow aftermarket scan usage, as long as they're using the appropriate software.
Thank you, Connor, for answering all of the questions so thoroughly. Paul?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy and Connor. Appreciate it. A lot of good questions there. Don't forget to check CIECA.com for a full schedule of future broadcasts and to watch recordings of past webinars. Links are available under the CIECAST tab on the top of the page. Today's video will be available probably tomorrow. CIECA has partnered with the Automotive Management Institute. Attendees of this webinar are eligible to receive credit toward a professional designation from AMI after taking a short quiz on its website. A link will be sent to all attendees of today's presentation. And finally, please follow CIECA's social media platforms to stay updated on upcoming events and CIECA news. And with that, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you.